I thought it was just a broken phone, but when the technician called me to come see something, I had no idea that one look at that screen would make my knees go weak. If I had known what was inside my granddaughter's phone, I would have never handed it over. You know, I've always trusted my granddaughter. She's only 16, a bright, sweet girl who helps me around the house and always greets me with that innocent smile. So when she told me her phone wasn't turning on, I didn't think twice. I told her I'd take it to the repair shop the next day. It was just another ordinary morning, until everything changed. The phone wouldn't even light up when plugged in. I tried pressing the buttons. Nothing. Just a black screen. She looked a little nervous when I said I'd take it to the shop. But I thought maybe she was worried about the cost. I told her, "Don't worry. Grandma's got this." She gave me a small, forced smile and said, "Please don't let anyone open it too much, okay?" That was strange. I didn't think much of it then. When I got to the small repair shop near our town square, the young technician greeted me kindly. He looked barely older than my granddaughter. I explained that the phone just stopped working. He nodded, said it might be a battery issue, and asked if I'd like to wait. I decided to stay. He opened the back cover, carefully connected a few cables, and plugged it into his computer. The moment he did, his expression changed. He frowned slightly, stared at the screen, then looked at me. "Ma'am, are you sure you want to fix this phone?" I laughed nervously. "Why, is it that bad?" He didn't laugh back. He said, "There are some files here. Something strange. I think you should see this." At first, I thought maybe it was a virus or some scam app. But then he turned the monitor toward me, and there it was. A folder on her phone labeled, "Do Not Open." My heart sank. The technician hesitated, then asked for my permission. I nodded slowly. He opened the folder. Inside were dozens of videos. Short clips, some just a few seconds long. The first one started playing automatically. It was recorded in her bedroom. The camera was shaky, like someone had set it up on a desk or hidden shelf. I could see my granddaughter sitting on her bed, staring into the camera, whispering something. Her voice was quiet, almost trembling. She said, "If anything happens to me, this is proof." I froze. What does she mean?" I whispered. The technician looked at me, unsure. He clicked another video. This time she was crying. The date on the video was from just 3 nights ago. She said, "He told me not to tell anyone, but I'm scared, Grandma. I think he's watching me." I felt my chest tighten. "Who's she talking about?" I asked. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my purse. The technician didn't answer. He just kept scrolling through more files. There were text messages, too. Hundreds of them. From an unknown number saved as "Don't Answer." Every message made my stomach twist. "You told anyone yet?" "I saw you at the store today." "You think Grandma can protect you?" "Send me another photo or I'll tell everyone what you did." My mind went blank. Who was this person? What did they want from her? The technician looked at me with concern and said quietly, "Ma'am, you should call the police." But I couldn't move. My legs felt heavy, like they were stuck to the floor. This was my sweet little granddaughter, the girl who helped me bake cookies, who hugged me every night before bed. And someone had been threatening her. The technician helped me recover the full data backup from the phone. He transferred everything to a USB drive and gave it to me. "Don't show anyone else," he said softly. "Go straight to the authorities." But before I did, I had to talk to her. That evening, I waited for her to come home from school. My hands were trembling the whole time I made tea. When she walked in, she saw my face and froze instantly. "Grandma? What's wrong?" I didn't know where to start, so I simply said, "I saw your videos." She went pale. Her backpack dropped to the floor. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Grandma, please don't be mad. I didn't want you to know." Mad? No, I was terrified. I held her hands and said, "Who is he? Who's been messaging you?" She hesitated, then whispered, "It's someone from school, but he's not a student anymore." My heart stopped. She explained that a man, a former teaching assistant from her school, had started messaging her online a few months ago. At first, he seemed nice, helping her with assignments, talking about college. But soon the messages turned dark. He started asking for pictures. When she refused, he threatened to post edited ones, fake ones, if she didn't obey. He somehow got access to her private accounts. He even followed her home once. She said she tried to tell a teacher, but he convinced her nobody would believe her. So she recorded everything, the videos, the chats, as proof. She was too scared to tell me. By then I was crying. I didn't even realize it. I hugged her so tight she could barely breathe. I promised her she wasn't alone anymore. That night I went to the police station with her. We showed them the USB drive, the messages, and every single video. The officers took it seriously. More seriously than I expected. They traced the number, and within a few days, they found him. He had multiple fake accounts and had been contacting other girls from the same school. It turned out my granddaughter's phone had stopped working because he tried to wipe it remotely after she refused to respond. But the files stayed, hidden deep in the backup. If that technician hadn't checked, if I had just thrown the phone away like I first thought, we might never have known the truth. When the police finally told us he was arrested, I broke down crying again, not out of relief, but out of fear of how close we came to losing her. For weeks after, my granddaughter barely spoke. She'd wake up crying, saying she could still hear the messages. So I did what any grandmother would do. Every night I sat beside her bed and told her stories until she fell asleep. Slowly, she started to smile again. One day she whispered, "Grandma, thank you for believing me." Now, when I look back, I realize something important. Sometimes danger doesn't come from dark alleys or strangers outside. Sometimes it hides in the small screen we hand to our children every day. I still keep that broken phone in a box as a reminder, not of fear, but of awareness, because that one broken device saved her life. If you're a parent or grandparent listening to this, please pay attention. If your child seems distant, nervous, or guards their phone too tightly, don't ignore it. You might just save them from something they're too scared to talk about. Watch my next story. It might just open your eyes before it's too late. I thought it was finally over when they arrested him. But a week later, I got another message from my granddaughter's number. Except her phone was still locked away in a police evidence bag. When something terrible happens, you think the worst part is behind you once it's over. But no one tells you how fear lingers. How it hides in small things like a phone notification or the sound of a message tone. After everything that happened with my granddaughter's phone, we tried to move on. But life had other plans. It had been 2 weeks since the police arrested the man who tormented my granddaughter. We were slowly returning to normal. She had started going back to school, smiling again, even helping me water the plants like she used to. Then one evening, while I was washing dishes, I heard her phone buzz on the table. The sound froze me. It shouldn't have made any noise. That phone wasn't even supposed to work anymore. The police had taken it. I walked closer and saw it. A single message notification glowing on the cracked screen. From an unknown number. The message said, "Miss me." My heart nearly stopped. I called the police immediately. They confirmed the man was still in custody. There was no way he could have sent anything. But somehow, someone did. The next morning, the officer handling our case came over. He brought a technician from the cyber unit. They checked the message, and what they told me made my blood run cold. The message wasn't new. It had been scheduled weeks ago. Apparently, he'd set up a system to send delayed texts automatically, even after being blocked or arrested. He planned it that way. Like one last way to scare her even after he was gone. But that wasn't all. The technician said something else. There's another number connected to the same app. It's still active, meaning someone else had access to the same network. The officer told us they would investigate further. But for now, we needed to stay calm. Stay calm? How do you stay calm when your granddaughter's phone, the same phone that held all her nightmares, starts talking again? That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house made me jump. I checked every lock twice. I even kept a flashlight beside my bed like some kind of weapon. But around 2 a.m., something happened that made me realize it wasn't over. My granddaughter screamed. I ran to her room, heart pounding. She was sitting up in bed, sweating, shaking, pointing at her window. "He was there, Grandma," she cried. "He was looking at me." I ran outside with the flashlight, but there was no one. Just the wind and the shadows of the trees. The police searched the yard the next day and found footprints. Fresh ones. Someone had been there. The police installed a small camera facing her window for safety. They told us to act normal, not to make it obvious. Days passed. No sign of anyone. We tried to go back to living normally. Then on the 5th night, I woke up to a faint clicking sound, like someone typing. It was coming from the living room. I slowly peeked in and froze. The laptop was open, the one my granddaughter used for school. It was on, and someone was remotely controlling it. The cursor moved by itself, opening folders, typing commands. I slammed it shut instantly. My hands were trembling as I pulled the plug out. But then the house phone rang. It was an unknown number. I picked it up and all I heard was breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. Then a whisper. "You can't protect her forever." I dropped the phone. The next morning, we went straight to the police again. They traced the IP from the laptop and discovered that someone was accessing her cloud backups from another city. The officer said it was probably a second accomplice. Someone who had been working with the man they arrested. They immediately put our address under temporary watch. I thought that would finally keep us safe. But then I found something that made me question everything. A week later, while cleaning my granddaughter's room, I noticed a small black dot under her study desk. It looked like a screw at first, but when I looked closer, my stomach dropped. It was a tiny camera, hidden, barely visible. I called the police again. They came immediately and started checking the house. Behind the curtains, inside smoke detectors, even under the TV cabinet. They found 3 more. Someone had planted hidden cameras in our home, and one of them had a tiny blinking light, meaning it was still active. The officer disconnected them and asked if we had let any repair workers, guests, or neighbors inside recently. I shook my head. But then I remembered something. A week before the arrest, a man had come to check the internet connection. He said there were issues in the area and needed to test the router. He had an ID, a uniform, looked completely official. I didn't even question it. Turns out that man never worked for the internet company. He was a fake technician, and according to the police, he might have been working with the man who targeted my granddaughter. They believe he installed those cameras, trying to keep watching her, even after the other man was caught. When I heard that, I nearly fainted. All that time, while we thought we were safe, someone was still watching. After that, we moved to a new place. The police handled the investigation, and the case went federal once they realized there were other victims. It's been months now. My granddaughter is finally in therapy. She's learning to smile again, to trust again. But there are nights when she still wakes up crying, asking, "What if they find us again?" And honestly, I don't know what to say, because even though the men were caught, the fear they planted, that never really goes away. I keep every window locked, every curtain closed, every device checked, not because I'm paranoid, but because I've seen what happens when you trust too easily. If you're watching this, please, never assume your loved ones are safe just because the problem seems solved. Evil doesn't disappear when the story ends. Sometimes it waits quietly. For you to stop looking? Watch part 3, where I tell you what I found in the final hidden camera's memory card. I thought the nightmare was finally over when the police found the hidden cameras. But when they checked the last one, the one still blinking red, they discovered something that made even the officers go silent. And what was on that memory card changed how I saw my granddaughter forever. When you've been through something terrifying, you think finding answers will bring peace. But sometimes, Answers hurt more than the mystery. After the arrests, after we moved to a new house, I finally started to feel safe again. At least that's what I told myself. Until one evening the detective called and said, "Ma'am, we need you to come in. It's about the last memory card." That night I could barely breathe. I sat on the couch, hands clutching my cup of tea so tightly it almost cracked. Why would they call me? What could possibly be on that camera that I needed to see? When I got to the station the next morning, the detective looked serious. He said, "We found footage from the night before the first man was arrested. You should see this for yourself." He placed a USB drive into the computer, pressed play, and turned the screen toward me. The footage was grainy, the kind you'd expect from a small hidden camera. The angle faced my granddaughter's bedroom. She was sitting on her bed, head down, typing on her phone. Then she looked up, straight into the camera. It was like she knew it was there. She smiled, not scared, not surprised, but calm. Then she whispered, "I know you're watching, and I'm watching you too." I froze. The detective paused the video and looked at me. "You see what I mean?" he asked quietly. He pressed play again. In the next few seconds, she stood up, walked closer to the desk where the hidden camera was placed, and picked it up, directly staring into the lens. Then she said something that still echoes in my mind. "You think I don't know who you are? You'll regret this." The detective explained that this recording was made just a day before the first suspect was arrested, meaning she found the camera before we did, he told me. "Ma'am, it seems your granddaughter wasn't just a victim. She might have been tracking them too." I didn't understand. My granddaughter, the same girl who could barely sleep at night, who cried in my arms for weeks, had somehow known what was happening all along. When I got home, I asked her about it. At first, she denied everything. She said she was scared. She didn't know about the cameras. But I told her I'd seen the footage. She went quiet. Then tears filled her eyes. "Grandma, I didn't tell you because I didn't want to drag you into it." She confessed that after the man started threatening her, she realized she needed evidence. Real evidence, not just screenshots. She found out he wasn't acting alone, and that someone was watching her through the cameras. So instead of panicking, she pretended to be scared, to make them careless. She said, "I knew they'd watch the footage. I wanted them to know I wasn't afraid anymore. I didn't know whether to be proud or terrified." But then she said something that broke me. "Grandma, I wasn't doing it just for me. There were other girls. I found them online. They were being threatened too." She'd joined an online forum for victims of harassment. There she met other girls who recognized the same man, the same type of messages, same profile picture, same tactics. That's when she started digging. She tracked their usernames, gathered screenshots, even tricked one of the men into sending her his location by pretending to be another victim. She handed that evidence anonymously to a local news blog, which eventually caught the attention of authorities. That's how the police started investigating in the first place. My granddaughter, 16 years old, had been fighting this whole thing quietly, bravely, while pretending to be helpless so the predators would reveal themselves. I didn't know whether to cry or hug her. She looked so small, sitting there explaining how she planned everything. Her eyes were tired, older than they should have been. I told her, "Sweetheart, you don't need to fight anymore. You did more than enough." But she shook her head and whispered, "It's not over yet, Grandma. There's one more." My heart sank. "What do you mean, one more?" She hesitated, then showed me a message from a new number that had arrived just a day before. It said, "You think you stopped us? We were never after you." The police traced it and found it came from a burner phone, impossible to track. But the message didn't scare her. It scared me, because what did they mean? "We were never after you." That night I couldn't sleep again. Around 3 a.m. I heard faint voices coming from her room. I quietly walked closer and heard her talking. Not crying, not scared, just talking calmly into her laptop camera. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught the last line she said. "I told you to stop. This is your last warning." When I opened the door, she quickly shut the laptop. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. She sighed and said, "No one important." But something in her eyes told me she wasn't being honest. The next morning, she was gone. Her phone, her bag, everything was still there. No note, no message, just gone. I called the police immediately. They launched a search. Hours turned into days, days into weeks. Then one afternoon, I got an email. It was from her address. No subject line, no message. Just a video attached. When I opened it, I saw her, sitting by a riverbank, wearing the same hoodie she left the house in. She looked calm, even peaceful. She said, "Grandma, don't be scared. I'm okay. I need to finish what I started. You'll understand soon." Then the video cut off. The police searched everywhere. The nearby woods, old buildings, bus stations. But there was no trace of her. Weeks later, they found signs she'd been using different names online, contacting people tied to the same criminal group. They believe she went into hiding, maybe even working with the authorities quietly now. But I haven't heard her voice since that day. I still keep her room exactly as it was. The same pictures on the wall, the same stuffed toy on her pillow. Some nights I sit on her bed and replay that video, just to hear her say, "Don't be scared." But how can I not be? She was my little girl, and somehow she became part of something far bigger and darker than I ever imagined. The final memory card didn't just show me what happened. It showed me who she had become. Stronger, smarter, braver than I could ever be. And though I don't know where she is, I know she's still fighting, because that's what she does. If you have someone you love, check in on them. Not everything broken needs fixing. Sometimes it's the ones who look strong that are fighting the hardest battles in silence. Watch part 4, the moment I finally found her, and the truth she'd been hiding from me all along. I had almost given up hope of ever seeing her again. But one cold morning I got a message. 3 words that made my heart stop. It said, "I'm coming home." And when I finally saw her, I realized she wasn't the same girl who left. Months had passed since my granddaughter disappeared. Every day felt like walking through fog. Half fear, half faith. The police had closed the case, saying she'd left on her own and was safe somewhere. But safe doesn't mean fine. Safe doesn't mean home. I prayed every night, lighting a candle by her photo, whispering, "Please, just one sign." And one day, I got it. It was early morning. I was watering the plants when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It said, "I'm coming home. Don't tell anyone." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands shook so bad I nearly dropped the phone. It had to be her. No one else called me Grandma, the way she did in her messages. I waited all day, staring at the door, every little sound making my heart race. But she didn't come. Not that day. Not the next. It was on the 3rd day when I heard soft knocks at the door. 3 slow knocks, like she used to do as a kid. One for me, one for her mom, one for luck. When I opened the door, I froze. She was standing there, but she didn't look like the same girl who'd left months ago. Her hair was shorter, her eyes sharper, and her face tired but steady. "Hi, Grandma," she said softly. I pulled her into my arms, crying harder than I had in years. She hugged me back, but her body felt tense, guarded. When I asked where she'd been, she simply said, "Somewhere safe." But I could tell there was more. Over the next few days, she barely spoke. She'd spend hours sitting by the window, phone in hand, typing quietly. Sometimes she'd delete whole conversations right after sending them. One night, I asked, "Sweetheart, who are you talking to?" She looked at me and said, "Someone helping me finish this." Then she added, "Grandma, do you trust me?" Of course, I said yes. But deep down, I was scared again, because every time I thought this nightmare was over, it found a way back. A week later, I woke up to the sound of voices in the living room. She wasn't alone. 2 people were sitting with her, a man and a woman, both in plain clothes, with files spread across the table. When I walked in, the woman smiled gently. "Ma'am, we're from the Cybercrimes Division. Your granddaughter has been working with us." I felt dizzy. "Working with you?" The man nodded. "She's been helping us track an online trafficking ring. The evidence she gathered before she disappeared helped us shut down 2 major operations." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My granddaughter, a 16-year-old girl, had become part of a criminal investigation. She looked at me with tear-filled eyes. "I couldn't tell you, Grandma. They said if I did, they'd pull me out. I had to stay quiet until it was over." For days after, I didn't know how to feel. Proud? Angry? Relieved? She was safe. But she had lived in hiding, worked with strangers, risked her life, all without telling me. Later that night, while she was asleep, I sat by her bed and opened her notebook. I know I shouldn't have, but something told me I needed to understand. Inside were pages of names, dates, and notes written in neat handwriting. She had tracked multiple victims, girls from different cities, and cross-referenced online profiles that led back to fake tutoring accounts. These were the same accounts the police had been investigating for months. On one page, I saw a line written in red ink. "Don't just survive. Expose them." The next morning, I confronted her. She didn't get angry. She just smiled sadly and said, "Grandma, I started this scared and alone, but when I saw how many others were suffering, I couldn't stop. I had to help." I held her face and whispered, "You're too young to carry this." And she said something I'll never forget. "Maybe, but I'm not too young to care." A few weeks later, the agents came again, this time to thank her. They told us the operation she helped expose had led to 12 arrests across the country. Dozens of girls were finally safe because of her. I watched her as they spoke, her hands trembling slightly, eyes glistening. She wasn't just my granddaughter anymore. She was a survivor who turned her pain into strength. After the agents left, we sat outside on the porch. The evening light fell softly on her face. She turned to me and said, "Do you think Mom would be proud of me?" I smiled through tears. "She'd be more than proud. She'd call you her hero." She looked down and whispered, "I didn't do it to be a hero, Grandma. I did it so no other girl would have to live in fear like I did." For the first time in months, I saw peace in her eyes. But peace doesn't erase the scars. Sometimes she still wakes up sweating, whispering names from her notes. And sometimes she stares at her phone for hours, like she's waiting for another message that never comes. It's been almost a year since that day she came home. The nightmares are fading. The fear is quieter now. But I've learned something I'll never forget. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through tears, through pain, through silence. My granddaughter taught me that. She's back in school now, studying computer security. She says she wants to help build systems that protect people like her, the ones who get lost in the dark corners of the internet. Every time I see her sitting at the computer, focused, fearless, I think back to that broken phone, the one that started it all. It used to remind me of fear. Now, it reminds me of courage. And sometimes, when the sun sets and the house is quiet, she sits beside me, holds my hand, and says, "Grandma, we made it." And I whisper back, "Yes, we did." Watch the final part, where I reveal the message she left hidden in that old phone. A message meant for every parent and grandparent in the world. I thought everything was over, that we could finally move on. But a few weeks ago, I found something inside her old, broken phone, a message she left behind. Not for me, but for every parent and grandparent in the world. And after watching it, I couldn't stop crying. It's been almost a year since my granddaughter came back home. She's stronger now, brighter, living with a peace I prayed she'd find. The fear that once filled our home has finally quieted down, But there was still one thing I couldn't bring myself to do. Open her old phone, the one that started it all, the phone that held the secrets, the threats, the pain, and as I would soon find out, something else. I kept that phone in a small box inside my drawer, wrapped in tissue, like a memory I wasn't ready to touch. Every time I saw it, I felt both thankful and afraid. Thankful it helped save her, and afraid of what was still inside. One morning, while cleaning my drawer, the box slipped and fell to the floor. The phone tumbled out. The screen flickered faintly, just for a second, and then turned black again. Something in me whispered, "It's time." I took it to the same technician who had first repaired it, the same young man who had shown me those videos a year ago. He looked at me and said, "It's been through a lot, ma'am, but let's see what we can find." When he turned it on using his tools, the screen stayed dark for a few seconds. Then a blue folder appeared on the desktop labeled, "If Found, Play." My hands were shaking when I clicked it open. There was only one video file. I hesitated, but the technician quietly said, "Maybe it's meant for you." The video began with a soft sound. Her voice. "Hi, Grandma." I felt my throat tighten instantly. It was her, younger, before everything that happened. Her hair was longer. Her eyes still carried that innocent spark. She looked into the camera and said, "If you're seeing this, it means you found my folder. Please don't be scared. I needed to say something, not just to you, but to everyone who cares for someone like me." She took a deep breath. "I know I messed up by hiding things from you, but sometimes we don't stay silent because we don't trust you. We stay silent because we don't want you to look at us differently, because we're scared you'll think we're broken." My eyes filled with tears. She continued, her voice trembling but steady. "If you have a daughter, a granddaughter, a niece, anyone young who lives with a phone in their hand, please talk to them, not as an adult telling them what not to do, but as someone who will listen without judgment. Because sometimes, silence is the only thing more dangerous than what's actually happening." She paused, wiped a tear from her cheek, and smiled faintly. I know what I went through was horrible, but it also showed me something. That evil hides in plain sight. It doesn't wear a mask or knock loudly. It whispers. It pretends to be kind. It says, "You can trust me." And before you realize it, it's already inside your life. Her tone grew softer. "Grandma, I know how much you blame yourself. Please don't. You did everything right. You loved me. You listened when I couldn't even speak. You saved me, even when I didn't know how to ask for help." I covered my mouth to stop myself from sobbing. Even the technician turned away, pretending to check something on his computer. Then she said something that I'll never forget. "If you're a parent or grandparent watching this, please, put down your phone for a while. Look at your child. Ask them if they're okay. Not just once, but until they believe you mean it. Ask what they love. Ask what scares them. Don't just tell them to stay safe. Show them what safety feels like." She looked down for a moment, then back into the camera. "You can't always protect us from the world, but you can teach us to protect ourselves. That's what you did for me, Grandma. You showed me that I was worth saving." Then she gave a tiny laugh and said, "If I ever forget to tell you, thank you for never giving up on me." The screen froze on her smile. Then the video ended. I just sat there staring at the monitor, unable to move. The technician handed me a tissue and said quietly, "She's special, ma'am. You both are." That night, I played the video again. And again. Every word felt like it was written, not just for me, but for every parent who ever missed a sign, every grandparent who ever said, "Kids these days are always on their phones," without realizing what might really be happening behind that screen. I realized her message wasn't about fear. It was about awareness, about connection. She wasn't warning us about monsters online. She was reminding us not to become strangers in our own homes. So I decided to share her video, With the police's permission, I uploaded it to a private group for parents in our town. Within hours, hundreds of people had seen it. Messages started pouring in. Mothers, fathers, grandparents, all saying the same thing. "I didn't know. Thank you," one mother wrote. "I checked my daughter's messages after watching your granddaughter's story. You saved her." Another said, "I talked to my son for the first time about what scares him online. I never knew." I realized that even in her absence, my granddaughter was still protecting people. Her voice, her story. It was reaching places I never could. A few weeks later, she came home from school and saw me watching the video again. She smiled softly and said, "You found it, didn't you?" I nodded. "You made me cry, you know." She laughed quietly. That was the point. Then she sat beside me and said, "Grandma, you know what I learned through all this?" I asked what. She said, "That being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you care enough to keep going, even when you are." And I realized she wasn't just talking about herself. She was talking about me, about every parent who has ever tried to keep their child safe in a world that keeps changing faster than love can keep up. I still keep that phone in the same box, but now I don't hide it, because that phone, that broken, haunted little thing, carries more than pain. It carries a voice that every family needs to hear. Her voice, her truth, her message. Watch my next story, The Phone That Saved a Generation, where I reveal how her message inspired thousands of families around the world. They say one voice can't change the world, but my granddaughter's voice, the same trembling voice that once cried for help, reached millions, and what started as a broken phone became the message that saved an entire generation. It's strange, you know, how something so small, a phone, a few words, one simple video, can spark a wave that touches people you'll never even meet. I never planned for any of this. I just wanted to protect her, to make sure no one else went through what she did. But fate had other plans. After I shared her video with a few parents in our town, it spread faster than I could have ever imagined. People shared it on Facebook, then on TikTok, then YouTube. At first, I was scared. Scared that maybe it would bring back the pain she had worked so hard to forget. I remember sitting her down and asking, "Are you sure you want this to be out there?" She smiled softly and said, "Grandma, if my pain can stop someone else from getting hurt, then it's worth it." That's when I realized she wasn't a victim anymore. She had become a voice that refused to be silenced. Within weeks, our story appeared in local news articles, then national ones. Then, one day, I got a call from a reporter asking if I'd be willing to do an interview. Not about what happened, but about how families could learn from it. I was hesitant. Talking about it still made my heart ache. But my granddaughter looked at me and said, "You always told me to face fear with love. This is your turn." So I said yes. During the interview, I told them the truth. That I wasn't a perfect grandma. That I didn't see the signs right away. That sometimes love blinds us because we think bad things only happen to other families. But I also told them something else. That healing doesn't come from silence. It comes from talking, listening, forgiving, and rebuilding trust. After that interview aired, I started getting letters. Hundreds of them. From mothers, fathers, teenagers, teachers, all saying the same thing. Your story opened our eyes. Because of your granddaughter, my child spoke up. Because of you, we checked our kids' phones and saved them in time. I cried every single day reading those messages because for the first time I felt like the pain that once destroyed our family was now saving others. Then something unexpected happened. A group of digital safety advocates reached out. They wanted to create a campaign based on her story to educate parents and teenagers about online safety and emotional awareness. They asked if we would allow her video to be used as part of the campaign. I looked at my granddaughter and said, "This is your story. Your choice." She nodded with a small smile. Let's do it." Soon her video was translated into over 10 languages. Schools played it during awareness assemblies. Teachers used it as part of classroom discussions. And on social media, people began sharing it under a new hashtag. Her voice matters. Every time I opened my phone, I saw people sharing stories of their own. Young girls, boys, even parents who said her words gave them the courage to speak. That one small folder labeled "If Found, Play" had become a worldwide movement. And one night, as I watched all those videos flood my screen, my granddaughter sat beside me and whispered, "Grandma, do you think this is what healing feels like?" I smiled through tears and said, "No, sweetheart. This is what change feels like." Months later, we were invited to a youth conference. Thousands of students were there, faces full of energy, curiosity, and hope. They asked her to speak. When she walked on that stage, I held my breath. She was nervous, but she didn't show it. She stood there holding the microphone and said, "When I was younger, I thought silence kept me safe. But silence only gave fear a home inside me. What saved me wasn't just my grandma. It was being seen, being heard." Then she looked at the crowd and said, "If you're hiding something that hurts, please don't wait for someone to rescue you. Speak, even if your voice shakes, because someone out there is waiting to listen. Someone who cares more than you think." The entire hall stood up in applause. Some were crying, some were hugging each other. And in that moment, I realized something. My granddaughter wasn't just healing. She was leading. Today, her story has reached over 10 million people online. We still get letters, messages, even drawings from kids who say they found courage because of her. She's now helping schools build safer spaces for students to talk. She even dreams of becoming a counselor one day. As for me, I've started writing everything down. Every memory, every lesson, every tear. Because someday, when I'm gone, I want her to look back and know that her story mattered. Sometimes I still think about that broken phone, how I almost threw it away the day I found it. If I had, none of this would have happened. And maybe that's the lesson life keeps teaching us, that even the most painful things can carry purpose. Sometimes broken things don't need to be fixed. They just need to be understood. Now that phone sits on my shelf, not as a reminder of fear, but of hope, because it saved not just my granddaughter, but countless others who now know they are not alone. Watch my next story, Her Voice Still Echoes, where I reveal how one message kept saving lives years after it was first heard. It's been 5 years since that video changed our lives. You'd think the world would forget. But even now, every few months, I still get messages from strangers saying, "Your granddaughter's story saved my child." Her voice, it's still echoing. Time moves fast. My granddaughter is grown now. No longer the scared little girl clutching her phone in silence. She's studying psychology, working part-time at a youth center, and teaching others how to find strength in their own stories. And me, I've grown older, softer, quieter, but more thankful than ever. There are moments when I sit by the window holding a cup of tea and think, how did we get here? How did a simple phone repair turn into a movement that touched millions? Even with all the love and awareness in the world, darkness still finds its way in. New stories started appearing online. Young teens struggling, families breaking apart, lives lost to online manipulation. It reminded me that our fight wasn't over, because for every person who finds hope, there's someone else still hiding behind a screen, afraid to speak. That's when my granddaughter told me, "Grandma, we can't just share our story. We have to build something from it." She wanted to start a foundation. Her Voice Still Echoes. A place where kids could talk safely, where parents could learn to understand, and where victims could find real help, not judgment. I remember the first time she showed me the logo she designed. It was simple, a small sound wave in the shape of a heart. She said, "This is what healing looks like." Voices creating ripples. At first, I didn't think people would pay attention, but she believed. She started with online webinars, then small workshops in schools. Every session ended the same way, with tears, hugs, and kids saying, "Thank you for listening." Her story wasn't about fear anymore. It was about connection, about breaking cycles of silence. Soon her foundation began to grow. Volunteers joined in. Teachers, parents, counselors, all inspired by the video that started it all. One day she asked me to come with her to a local event. I watched as she stood in front of a crowd of over 500 students, sharing not just her pain, but her recovery. She said, "Your past doesn't define you, but your voice can change someone else's future." The applause that followed felt like thunder, but the kind that brings rain after a long drought. That night after the event, we sat in the car quietly. I looked at her and said, "Do you realize how many lives you've touched?" She smiled softly. "No, Grandma. We've touched. You started it when you refused to stay silent." Her words hit me hard, because she was right. None of this would have happened if I hadn't taken her phone to get fixed that day. I still remember the fear that gripped me when the technician showed me what he'd found. But now, that fear has turned into something else. Purpose. And then something happened that I never expected. Her foundation got invited to a global youth summit in Singapore. People from more than 20 countries came together to discuss digital safety, mental health, and online abuse prevention. She was one of the keynote speakers. When she stepped on that stage, wearing a simple white dress and holding her grandmother's bracelet on her wrist, I could barely hold my tears. She began her speech with the same line from her old video. "If you're watching this, it means you found my message. Please don't be scared." But this time, she wasn't a scared girl speaking to a camera. She was a young woman speaking to the world. She told them how silence almost destroyed her, how love, patience, and understanding brought her back, and how one small action, one grandparent who refused to look away, created a ripple that became a wave. The audience stood up in tears. People hugged strangers. Reporters wrote headlines like, "The girl who turned fear into hope." After the summit, her video started trending again, 5 years later. But this time, it wasn't because of shock. It was because of healing. Messages flooded in again. "Your granddaughter's foundation helped my daughter speak up." "We started family talk nights because of your story." "I showed your video to my students. They cried. And then they talked." I realized something that night. Her voice had become timeless. It wasn't just echoing online. It was echoing in hearts, homes, classrooms, and communities. Now, when I visit her foundation's office, I see walls filled with handwritten notes, messages from survivors, parents, even teachers. One of them says, "I didn't know I mattered until I heard her voice." Every time I see that, I whisper a little prayer of thanks, because that's all I ever wanted, for her to know she mattered. She once said to me, "Grandma, our story isn't a tragedy. It's a guidebook." And she's right. It's a guide for every family learning how to talk again, for every parent learning how to listen, for every child learning that it's okay to be scared, as long as you don't face it alone. Sometimes I still play her old video at night, not because I miss the pain, but because I want to remember how far we've come, how a single broken phone became a bridge between generations. Her voice still echoes, not through speakers, but through lives, through love, through change. And as long as that echo continues, I know her story will never fade. Watch my next story, The Last Letter, where I share the message my granddaughter wrote for the next generation before leaving for her new life abroad. When my granddaughter left for the airport, she hugged me tighter than ever before. But what I didn't know was that she had left something behind on the kitchen table, a small white envelope with my name written in her handwriting. And inside it was her last letter. Life feels different now. The house is quieter, slower. Her laughter doesn't echo through the halls anymore, but her presence never left. She's gone abroad for her studies, to continue her work with young people, spreading the message she built from pain, turned into purpose. I knew the day would come when she'd leave, but knowing it doesn't make it easier. That morning, as I waved goodbye, I tried to stay strong, but when I turned around, I saw that envelope lying next to the teapot. Just seeing my name on it made my eyes blur. For hours, I couldn't bring myself to open it. I just kept it in my hands, feeling the weight of it. Light as a feather, yet heavy with memories. All day, I walked around the house remembering her. The way she'd sit on the couch with her tea, wrapped in a blanket sharing random stories. The way she'd look at me when she was thinking deeply. That tiny furrow in her brow that made her look like her late mother. And then, I remembered everything we had gone through. The fear, the discovery, the healing, the message that touched millions. This letter, it felt like the last chapter. And somehow, I was both ready and terrified to read it. As the sun began to set, I finally sat by the window. The same place where she and I used to drink tea together. I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, written in her neat, curved handwriting. It began with 2 words that immediately made me cry. Dear Grandma. I took a deep breath and started to read. Dear Grandma, if you're reading this, it means I've finally left for the next chapter of my life. Don't cry, okay? I know you are, because I am too while writing this. I wanted to leave you with words that will remind you that what we built together will never fade. Because even if I'm far away, my heart will always be here. In this home, in every cup of tea, in every quiet morning light. Grandma, do you remember that day when you took my phone for repair? The day that changed everything? Sometimes I think about it and realize it wasn't just my phone that was broken. It was me. But you didn't throw me away. You didn't say I was too damaged to fix. You just held me until I could heal on my own. You taught me that love isn't loud. It's quiet. It's patient. It's showing up again and again, even when it hurts. Now that I'm older, I understand why you looked so scared that day. You weren't scared of what you found on my phone. You were scared of losing me. And somehow that fear became our strength, because it made us fight harder for each other. When I talk to young people now, I tell them about you, about how one grandmother's courage saved my life, and countless others. They always ask, is she real? And I smile and say, yes, very real. And she still makes the best ginger tea in the world. Grandma, the world is full of noise. People shout, post, argue, pretend. But your voice, the one that whispered to me every night that I was enough, that's the voice that changed me. And I promise, I'll carry that same voice inside me wherever I go. If one day I start to lose faith, I'll close my eyes and think of your hands holding mine, trembling but strong. That's where home is. That's where I'll always return. Please don't worry about me. I'm happy. I'm safe. I'm doing what I was meant to do. And every time someone finds courage because of our story, I'll whisper, that was Grandma. And if you ever miss me too much, don't look at my pictures. Just open the window and listen, because if you listen closely enough, you'll still hear my voice echoing back to you. I love you more than words, more than distance, more than time itself. Your granddaughter always, Lila. I couldn't stop crying. Her words felt like a gentle hand reaching out from miles away. Each sentence carried years of love, forgiveness, and growth. I looked out the window and smiled through my tears, because she was right. If I listened closely, I could almost hear her laugh in the wind. The same laugh that once disappeared in silence now danced freely in the air. I folded the letter carefully, pressed it against my heart, and whispered, you were never broken, my love. You were just waiting to shine. That night, I placed the letter beside the old phone on the shelf. The 2 symbols of our journey, the pain that started it all, and the love that healed it. It's been months since she left. Every morning, I make an extra cup of tea. One for me, one for her. It's a small ritual, but it makes me feel close to her. Sometimes I reread her letter. Other times I just sit quietly, watching the sunrise, thinking about how far we've come. Our story began with fear, then it became awareness, then it became hope, and now it's become a legacy. Because her voice still echoes. In the foundation she built, in the lives she saved, and in every heart that now knows that love can heal even the deepest scars. I once thought that chapter of our lives was ending, but now I understand. Some stories never end. They just keep finding new hearts to live in. Watch my next story, The Echo Never Dies, where I reveal how one final message from Lila changed a stranger's life forever. I thought our story had ended the day Lila left, but sometimes stories don't end. They travel, like whispers carried by the wind, until they find the next soul who needs them most. And one day, that soul appeared. It had been nearly 3 years since Lila left for her studies. Her videos, her speeches, and her project, Light After Silence, had reached millions. But for me, life had become quiet again. Every morning I'd sit by the window with 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for her, watching the same sunrise we used to admire together. Sometimes I'd receive letters from her, sometimes voice messages. But that day, something different arrived. A letter from someone I had never met, from someone who said Lila had changed their life. The envelope was thin, with no return address, just my name, written in shaky handwriting. I opened it carefully, my hands trembling with a strange mix of curiosity and fear. Inside was a 2-page letter. It began like this. Dear Grandma, you don't know me, but your granddaughter saved my life. I froze. I read those words again and again. My name is Arav. I'm 19 years old. I found Lila's video one night when I was about to give up. I was scrolling through my phone, ready to end everything. And then her voice appeared. She said, no matter how dark it feels right now, someone out there loves you more than you know. And for some reason I stopped. I listened. Then I watched her tell her story. About you. About the phone. About how love can save even the most silent cries. That night I cried like a child, but I didn't give up. Because I realized, maybe I still have someone waiting for me to come home too. Grandma, you don't know me, but I feel like I know you. Because in every word Lila spoke, I could feel your love. I could barely finish reading. My tears dropped onto the paper, smudging his handwriting. Somewhere out there, another life had been saved by the same love that once saved Lila. Weeks passed, but I couldn't stop thinking about that letter. Who was this boy, Arav? Where did he come from? Did Lila know him? Then one day, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a nervous voice said, Grandma, it's me, Arav. When Arav came to visit, he looked fragile yet full of hope. He was tall, with dark circles under his eyes, but a smile that carried sincerity. He brought flowers and a small box with him. This is for you, he said softly. I wanted to thank you, not just for Lila, but for what you both created. I invited him inside. He looked around the house quietly, like every corner meant something. When he saw the 2 cups of tea on the table, he smiled. She always mentioned that, he said. The 2 cups. One for you, one for her, nodded, fighting back tears. Yes, it's our ritual, even when she's far away. Then he opened the small box he'd brought. Inside was a silver bracelet engraved with 3 words. Light After Silence. She started this foundation for people like me, he said. And now I volunteer there. We help teenagers going through mental struggles. We tell them they're not alone. My hands trembled as I touched the bracelet. Lila's dream was alive. Her echo hadn't died. It had grown louder. That evening, Arav told me everything. His parents had separated when he was 12. He grew up in loneliness, drifting between relatives, never feeling like he belonged anywhere. He started hiding behind a fake smile, pretending everything was fine. until the pain became too heavy. One night, he said, I just wanted it all to stop. I didn't think anyone would care. But as he scrolled through his phone one last time, a random recommendation appeared on YouTube, Lila's video. The day my grandma saved my life. He clicked on it, and that single click changed everything. He told me it wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Like she had lived that darkness too, but found her way out. And that made me believe maybe I could too. He reached out to the foundation, got therapy, and slowly began rebuilding his life. And now, he was helping others do the same. When he finished speaking, he looked at me with tears in his eyes. Grandma, you don't know how many lives you've touched. Because your love for one person became a light for thousands. Before he left, Arav took out his phone and said, Lila told us that if we ever met you, we should record something for her. He started recording and smiled into the camera. Hey, Lila, he said. It's Arav. I finally met Grandma, and she makes the best ginger tea, just like you said. I laughed through my tears. He continued. I just wanted to say thank you, because your story saved me, and now I'm helping others like me, all because of what you and Grandma started. He handed me the phone and said, Now it's your turn. Grandma? I looked into the camera and whispered, My dear child, you said once that love never dies. You were right. It just changes shape and keeps finding hearts to live in. A few months later, Lila came home for a surprise visit. When she entered, I was in the garden, humming one of her childhood songs. She hugged me from behind and whispered, Guess who just hit 10 million views? I turned around, shocked. What? She laughed, tears in her eyes. The video, Grandma. The one Arav recorded with you. It went viral. My jaw dropped. People from around the world were sharing their stories, their letters, their healing journeys. The hashtag #WashLightAfterSilence was trending globally. And Lila said, Grandma, you're famous. We both laughed until we cried. But then she grew serious and said, You know, sometimes I used to wonder why we went through so much pain. But now I see. It was never just about us. It was about everyone who needed to hear that love still exists. I held her face and said softly, Yes, my child. Our story became their hope. Months later, when Lila gave her TED Talk, she ended with these words, This isn't my story anymore. It's ours. Because healing doesn't end when one person recovers. It begins again when that person helps another. And that's how echoes never die. They travel. They touch hearts. They live forever. Now, years later, I still sit by the same window. But this time, I don't pour 2 cups of tea. I pour 3. One for me, one for Lila, and one for all the souls who found their light through her story. Because the echo never died. It just kept finding new voices to speak through. And as the sun rises, I whisper softly, This isn't the end. It's the beginning of forever. Watch the next part. Letters from Strangers, where Grandma receives hundreds of letters from people touched by Lila's message. Each one a reminder that love once shared never disappears. After the video went viral, my mailbox was never empty again. Every day I found new letters from people I had never met, living in countries I had never visited, speaking languages I didn't even understand. But every letter said the same thing. Your story helped me find my light, and that's when I realized the world wasn't as broken as I thought. It's funny, isn't it? I started this diary years ago just to talk to myself, to keep my memories safe, the good ones, the painful ones, the ones I couldn't say out loud. And now, that same diary became a bridge between hearts. After Lila's last talk, the echo never dies. Thousands of people began sending letters to our foundation. Some were short, some were pages long, some written with shaky hands, others in neat cursive. but every single one carried something sacred. Truth. At first, I couldn't keep up. There were too many letters to read. The postman started joking that he needed a bigger bag just for me. But I made myself a promise that no letter would go unread, because each one was a heartbeat reaching out saying, "Please hear me." And as I started reading, I began to see a pattern, a silent pain connecting them all. Loneliness, shame, the fear of being misunderstood, just like Lila once felt, just like I once ignored, until it was almost too late. One letter came from a mother in Brazil. She wrote, "My daughter stopped talking to us after her bullying got exposed online. We didn't know how to reach her. Then we saw your story, and for the first time I realized she didn't need answers. She just needed me to listen. Now, we have dinner together every night, sometimes in silence, but that silence feels warm." Another came from an old man in Japan. He wrote, "I lost my wife 2 years ago. I stopped talking to anyone. Then I saw your video and remembered what you said. Love doesn't die. It just changes shape." So I started talking to her photo again, and somehow that helped. And then there was a letter from a 16-year-old girl in India. She said, "When my parents told me I was worthless, I believed them. But your granddaughter's speech made me realize I am allowed to matter." I kept these letters in a wooden box beside my bed. I called it the Box of Echoes, because every word inside it was proof that an echo could turn into a heartbeat. Weeks passed and I noticed something incredible. The more letters I received, the lighter I felt. It was as if every person who wrote to me had taken a small piece of my pain and replaced it with hope. One afternoon, I was sorting through the pile when I found a letter that looked different. It was written on old parchment paper, sealed with wax. No name, no address, just one line on the front. "For the woman who taught us that love listens." I opened it slowly. Inside it said, "Grandma, I don't have much time. I'm in the hospital, fighting an illness that doctors say might win. But your story gave me peace, because now I know, even if I leave, my words can still help someone else. You and Lila showed me that no act of kindness is ever wasted. When I go, please don't cry for me. Just promise me one thing, that you'll keep reading these letters, because as long as someone's voice is heard, no one is truly gone." I held that letter for hours. I didn't know who wrote it, but it felt like it was meant for me. And that night, I prayed for that unknown soul and for everyone who ever felt invisible. A few days later, I had an idea. What if these letters could help others too? So, with Lila's help, we started something new. A video series called Letters from Strangers. Every week, we read one real letter, with permission, and then Lila or I would respond, not as experts, not as counselors, but as two people who once needed someone to just listen. The first episode was about the girl from India. When the video went live, thousands commented things like, "I feel the same. I thought I was alone. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." In a few weeks, our channel crossed 1 million subscribers, but what mattered wasn't the number. It was the connection. Our story had grown from a single phone repair into a global family. Then one morning I received a special delivery, a huge bag filled with handwritten notes. Inside was a card from the post office itself. It said, "Dear Grandma, we've been collecting letters from people around the world who couldn't find your address. So we made a system. Every week, we'll deliver all letters marked, 'For Grandma.'" I couldn't believe it. Even the postal workers were moved by our story. Lila laughed and said, "See, Grandma, even the world's mail system believes in love now." That night, I sat surrounded by letters, tears, and laughter. Each envelope felt like a soul knocking gently, saying, "I'm still here." And as I read them one by one, I realized something beautiful. Our story was no longer just ours. It belonged to everyone who had ever dared to hope again. Today, my house looks more like a post office than a home. Boxes of letters fill every corner, from every continent, every language, every walk of life. But I wouldn't have it any other way, because every letter is proof that love is contagious. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet one that whispers, "You matter." Sometimes I imagine all those people, sitting in their rooms, writing their hearts out to someone they've never met, and I think maybe that's what the world needs most. Strangers who care enough to listen. Before going to bed, I pick one random letter, read it, and write a reply by hand. No email, no automation, just ink and paper. Because healing deserves time, and every time I seal an envelope, I whisper, "This is how echoes turn into stories." One evening, Lila and I sat together watching the sunset, the same orange glow that once marked our hardest days. She looked at me and said softly, "Grandma, I think this story has finally come full circle." I smiled. "No, my dear. It's just found new storytellers." We sat in silence, sipping tea. In the distance, I could hear children laughing. Probably from the new youth center named after her foundation. And I thought to myself, one broken phone, one moment of courage, and 1,000 letters later, the world feels a little less lonely. Watch the next story, the final diary page, where I write one last entry before passing my diary to Lila, ending the circle where it began. Every story begins with a first word and ends with silence. But what if that silence isn't the end? What if it's just the sound of peace? This is my final diary page. It's early morning. The sun is rising. The same way it always has, gentle and golden, pouring through the old lace curtains. My diary sits in front of me, open, waiting for one last story. The pages smell faintly of ink, tea, and time. The scent of everything I've lived. I've filled this book with memories of laughter, fear, heartbreak, and hope. And now, as my trembling hand holds the pen, I realize something simple. I am no longer writing for myself. I am writing for her, for Lila, for the girl who turned her pain into purpose, for the woman who taught the world to listen. When this all began, the day I took her phone for repair, I thought I was just fixing a broken screen. I didn't know I was about to uncover the cracks inside her heart. I still remember how my knees went weak when I saw those hidden messages. The ones filled with threats, shame, and fear. For a moment, I thought I'd lost her already. But that fear became my fuel. If love could break, then love could also rebuild. And somehow, through that pain, we both found our voices. She found courage. I found purpose. We healed together. Not overnight, but one tear, one talk, one day at a time. And today, as I sit here surrounded by her letters, her awards, her speeches, and her laughter echoing from the next room, I realize we didn't just survive. We transformed. There was something I once told Lila during one of her darkest nights. She had asked me, "Grandma, will this pain ever stop?" And I said, "No, my dear. But it will learn to walk beside you instead of holding you hostage." She didn't understand it then, but now she lives by those words. The pain didn't vanish. It turned into empathy. It taught her how to see others not by their scars, but by their strength. That's the magic of healing. It doesn't erase the storm. It just teaches you how to dance in the rain. Lila came to visit last night. She had that same sparkle in her eyes. The one she used to have when she was a child, discovering something new. "Grandma," she said, "I have to tell you something." I looked at her and smiled. "Go on, my love." "I've been offered a position by UNICEF," she said, almost breathless. "They want me to travel to different countries, speak to young girls, share our story, and build mental health programs for schools." For a second, I couldn't speak. Tears filled my eyes faster than words could. Then I held her hands and whispered, "Then go and let the world hear your heart." She hugged me tightly, and in that moment, I knew it was time. After she left for bed, I sat here, at this very desk, with my diary open, and I realized this book was never meant to end with me. It was meant to be passed on. So tonight I'm writing my final page, not as a goodbye, but as a handover. Dear Lila, when you read this, I might not be beside you, but I want you to know you were my greatest story. You taught me that love isn't about protecting someone from the world. It's about giving them the courage to face it. Every line in this diary holds a memory, not just of what we went through, but what we became. Survivors, dreamers, builders of light. Do you remember the night you told me, "Grandma, maybe our story can save someone else"? You were right. It didn't just save one. It saved thousands. And now, it's your turn to keep writing. Not here, not on paper, but through people. Through every life you touch, every soul you remind that they matter. If ever you feel lost again, just listen closely. You'll hear my voice in the wind. I'll be saying the same thing I said that day. You are not alone. Love never dies, my dear. It just changes shape, and mine has taken the shape of your heart. With all my love, Grandma. The next morning, I placed the diary on her bed, tied gently with a red ribbon. Beside it, I left my old reading glasses and a cup of tea. Then I waited by the window, watching the golden light spill into her room. When she found the diary, I could hear her gasp. She opened it slowly, reading page after page, tears dripping onto the words I'd written years ago. Then she reached the last page, the one you just read. I heard her whisper, "I'll make you proud, Grandma." And I knew. She already had. She came running to me, hugged me tight, and said, "I'll never stop telling our story." And I said softly, "You won't have to. The world will tell it for you now." Weeks later, Lila left for her journey. Her foundation grew into an international organization. Schools started using our story as part of awareness programs. Families began holding listening nights, evenings where everyone shared how they truly felt, without judgment. And I stayed here, at home, surrounded by her photos, her laughter, her letters, and peace. Every evening I still pour 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for her. Even though she's far away, I feel her with me, in every heartbeat, every quiet whisper of the wind through the curtains. People ask me, "Don't you miss her?" And I smile, because you can't miss what never left your heart. Now, as I write this very last line, my hand trembles. The ink is fading, but the story shines brighter than ever. Outside, the world feels calm. Birds singing, the smell of jasmine in the air, the sound of a new day beginning. And deep down, I know. This is how endings should feel. Not sad, not empty, but full. Because a story doesn't die when the writer stops writing. It lives on in every person who reads it, feels it, and carries it forward. I close my diary gently. On the cover, I write 2 words. Thank you. Then I whisper, for every heart that listened, for every soul that healed, thank you for being part of my story. That night, I placed the diary in the wooden box beside Lila's old phone, the one that started it all. And as I blew out the candle, I looked up at the stars and smiled, because somewhere out there, someone was hearing our echo again, and maybe, just maybe, finding the courage to begin their own story. This isn't goodbye. It's just the end of a chapter, and the beginning of 1,000 more. If you ever find yourself lost, come back to From Grandma's Diary. There's always another story waiting for you. It's been 7 years. 7 quiet, beautiful, healing years since Grandma wrote her final page. I still remember the morning I found her diary on my bed, wrapped in that red ribbon. That moment changed my life forever, because inside those pages, she didn't just leave stories. She left instructions on how to live. And tonight, for the first time, I'm reading it aloud, not to the world, but to my daughter. My little girl sits beside me, her hair tied in loose curls, her eyes wide and curious. She reminds me so much of myself. Curious, restless, hungry to understand everything. "Mom," she asks, "was Grandma really as brave as you say she was?" I smile. "She was braver. She taught me what bravery meant." She tilts her head. "Can I read her diary someday?" I hold the worn brown book in my hands. The pages are fragile now, soft and yellow like old petals. And for a moment I swear I can smell Grandma's tea again. "Not someday," I whisper. "Tonight." Scene 2. Reading Grandma's words. 3 or 6. I open the diary, and her handwriting greets me like an old friend. Looped, elegant, steady. Even in her last days, her words stood strong. I read aloud. "Dear Lila, when the world forgets to be kind, be the reminder. When others lose hope, be the hand that reaches out. And when you feel alone, remember, love never leaves. It only changes form." My daughter's lips curve into a small smile. "She wrote that for you?" "Yes, love. And now, she's writing it for you." I turn the page, my voice trembling. Each line feels like a heartbeat from another time. Each word feels like she's still here, whispering through the paper. After Grandma passed, I spent years trying to keep her promise alive. I traveled the world, spoke at schools, built foundations, held hands with strangers who shared their pain, and every time I stood on stage, I could hear her voice behind me saying, "Don't speak to impress, speak to heal." I built a movement from her words, a movement called "The Diary Lives On." It started small. Just me and a few girls who had gone through the same darkness I once did. But soon, thousands joined, then millions. Grandma's diary became a global project, a symbol of shared healing. People from all over the world began writing their own Grandma's diaries, sharing their stories of hope, fear, love, and recovery. And I realized she was right. Stories don't die. They multiply. I remember that day. The sky was soft gold. She was sitting by the window with her tea, looking peaceful. Like the world had finally forgiven her. I asked, "Grandma, do you ever wish things were different?" She smiled. "No, my dear, because every pain was a paragraph that led me here." She took my hand and said her last words to me. "Promise me, when your time comes, you'll leave your own diary behind." I promised her that day. And tonight, I'm keeping that promise. I take out a new notebook, fresh pages untouched. On the first page, I write, "From Grandma's Diary," the second chapter. And below it, I write the first words of my story. "Dear Grandma, I kept your promise. The world knows your name, not because of what you owned, but because of what you gave." I continue writing, my hand steady, my heart full. Your diary taught me that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering without fear. It's about turning wounds into windows, so others can see the light through you. As I write, my daughter rests her head on my lap. Her eyelids flutter, her breathing slows, and I realize something magical. She's falling asleep listening to the same words that once saved me. In my dream, Grandma is standing by the window again, bathed in warm morning light. She turns and smiles. "Lila," she says gently, "you did it." I run to her, tears streaming down my face. "Grandma, I hope I made you proud." She cups my face in her hands. "My dear, you made the world proud. You didn't just write my story. You became it. I start to cry. But I still miss you. She wipes my tears and whispers, then keep missing me. Because that's how you'll keep me alive. And then, just as she begins to fade into the light, she says, It's your turn now. Lila, write her story next. Morning. Lila wakes up inspired. Her daughter is still asleep beside her. I look at my daughter, her tiny fingers curled against the diary's edge, and suddenly, I know what Grandma meant. The story was never just hers, or mine. It was meant to be carried, generation by generation. A flame passed quietly through time. I whisper to my daughter, One day, when you're ready, this diary will be yours. Because healing, my dear, is not something you finish. It's something you inherit. Montage of people around the world reading the diary. Different languages, different faces. A mother in India reads it to her son. A teacher in Kenya shares it with her students. A teenager in Brazil copies her favorite line into her notebook. A grandmother in Japan smiles as she writes, Dear Lila, I understand. And somewhere across every continent, the same sentence echoes. From Grandma's diary, the story that saved us all. Camera slowly pans to the diary resting on a wooden table, a candle flickering beside it. I close the diary and look up at the sky. The morning light spills through the window. Just like it did for Grandma. For a moment, I swear I can hear her voice. Not loud, not distant. Just there, soft and steady. Well done, my dear. The story lives on, I whisper back. Yes, Grandma. It always will. The camera slowly zooms out as the candle flickers, then steadies. The diary remains open, a symbol that the story never truly ends. This was more than a story. It was a bridge between generations, between pain and peace, between goodbye and forever. And as long as one person keeps reading, keeps feeling, keeps loving, Grandma's diary will never close. The end of her story. The beginning of yours. From Grandma's diary. Thank you for being part of this journey.